Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. Happy Labor Day. Today I have a terrifying lineup of encounters to share with you. Before we get into them, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and my merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. The links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below. My merch is displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe, click the like button, and please leave a comment. It really does help. And it matters. And now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with today's upload, shall we? All right, guys, before we get into the upload, a couple things. Last night, if you didn't watch the second half, I made an announcement. As you know, I changed the channel's name, and I've been doing things different this year. I've been exploring Dogman, cryptid, paranormal, and kind of government cover-up stuff. And I've really kind of dedicated a lot of my effort into learning and researching haunted locations. And I have, since the beginning of the channel, purchased some really good ghost hunting equipment, proven to work, and like an SLS cam, EMF reader, just a bunch of interesting equipment that really does help out. Sure, instincts are great, but you know, when you have some sort of valid proof to put on camera, that's even better. Well, yesterday, I secured a overnight ghost hunt at the Conjuring House. I will be going there September 24th from 6 p.m. till 8 a.m. the next morning, the 25th. Don't worry, I'll still upload just one video on the 24th and 25th. But after I get home, I will be editing and putting together footage for the Conjuring House visit, which I am very excited about going to. Excuse me. And then in October 28th and 29th, I will be going to a paranormal con hosted by Ed and Lorraine Warren's daughter, Judy, and her husband, Tom. And I also secured a spot to go into their museum where all of their Ed and Lorraine Warren's cursed objects are held. And I'm looking forward to that, which I will be making videos there as well. So this is very exciting, and I really am happy the direction this channel's going. I couldn't be any more happy, and I hope you guys will enjoy it as well. So, but enough of that. Let's get into some encounters. Today's first subscriber experience. I talked to DJ yesterday. Now, the last time we had spoken, DJ had been outside and heard a growl, took a shot with his .45 ACP pistol, heard some more growling and kind of a yelp and just a massive commotion running up the mountain behind his home. Now, behind that mountain, or atop of that mountain, is an old cemetery, and past that is a strip mine. So, perfect Dogman location. Well, since, 4 months now, he has not had any wildlife since he spotted that female dogman with the pup. And then the large, kind of what he feels was a male. No genitalia had been spotted, but he feels it was a male. No wildlife has been on his property. He lives out in the sticks. And I'm not being offensive to him in any way. So it was odd that he had not had any kind of wildlife, rabbit, anything. Well, the wildlife has slowly started to come back, and he feels that either he ran it off and scared it, or shot it and it just maybe passed. He doesn't know. Hopefully it doesn't come back, because he's very happy with the way life is going now. Him and his wife love watching the wildlife in their backyard. They have a large backyard, beautiful, out in the sticks of Virginia. And, what's better than that? Watching deer at a stream in your backyard, having a cup of coffee. I'm glad that things had progressed in the proper way. So let's move on. Today's second encounter. This experience happened April 30th, 2022 in Birdsboro, Pennsylvania, in Birdsboro Preserve. This area is just north of French Creek State Park, and the forest intersects with another. There is roughly 15 to 20 square miles of dense natural woodland in this area. It is one of the largest forest areas in southeastern Pennsylvania. It was a crystal clear, warm spring day, and my 12-year-old daughter wanted to learn how to trout fish. We decided to go up to Hay Creek, which runs for 13 miles through French Creek State Park and through Birdsboro Preserve. We parked at the north end of the preserve on Old Route 82, now called Hay Creek Road. We hiked up into the old road past a still active larger quarry and continued up about a half a mile past that. We found a spot where she could practice wading into the stream in a safe, shallow area of the stream with a semi-fast moving water. There were a lot of people walking and hiking and horseback riding that day, and not a cloud in the sky. We fished this spot for a good 2 hours or so, slowly moving back down the stream. At one point, while I was sitting on the bank enjoying the stream and nature, while my daughter was fishing, I heard a loud crash, like a tree was falling over behind us. It was a bit strange because I didn't hear any chainsaws, and it sounded like a huge tree coming down. It was only a few hundred feet behind us, and it was super loud. Being an avid extreme outdoorsman for 3 decades, you know when things seem out of place. This was totally different from a tree falling over and then silence. This went on for about 2 minutes, and I stood up and looked around in the direction the sound was coming from, but saw nothing. I said to myself, that was a bit strange, and it just stopped. About 30 minutes later, I heard the same thing, and again, this went on for like 2 minutes. Now I'm puzzled and was like, what is going on? This is not normal. I said to my daughter, let's start heading back downstream and find another spot. I still didn't see anything unusual, but I was on alert. I thought to myself it could be a deer up in the back across the road, but this sounded much too large to be just a deer. Then I heard a giant crashing through the woods, as it was very loud. This time it was definitely closer to us. We walked about 200 yards down the trail, and we started hearing this again, and it was even closer than the past 2 times. We stopped and looked up toward the quarry in the direction of the sound, but still saw nothing. I said we'll cross the stream and fish down around the bend. The spot where you can cross the stream is about 30 feet wide and very slippery. We took it slow because the water was a bit high for my daughter. We were about halfway across, and all hell broke loose with the sounds of tree branches breaking again. It took us about 90 seconds to cross the stream, and I was holding her hand to help her. The whole time the sound is still going on, and I'm looking back to see nothing, because we are about 20 feet below the quarry where the old bridge was. Where we cross the stream, it's about a 6 to 7 foot berm to step up to road level. I get up first and help my daughter get up with my hand when I see something moving in the distance out of my peripheral. I turn and look and see nothing at first. Then, in the distance where this sound is coming from, I lock on to a 40-foot pine tree at the top of the quarry swaying violently side by side, at least 5 feet each way. I pointed to my daughter and said, "Holy crap, what is that? Look!" The next 40 to 50 seconds would change my life forever. We're watching the pine tree shake for 10 to 15 seconds. Then I saw what I thought was an arm reaching out of the tree. It grabbed a bird, which I believe was a turkey buzzard, and all of a sudden this thing jumps from the pine tree to a big oak tree, about 10 feet away, and starts climbing the outside of the canopy. It pivoted around somewhat like a spider on the top of the canopy and disappeared into the branches of this large oak tree. Keep in mind the leaves are just starting to bud on the trees, and we can see movement in the tree branches. This is about 200 to 300 feet away. The whole time branches are breaking, very large branches, about 2 inches thick. This goes on for 10 or more seconds, and then this thing jumps out of the tree. Now these trees are at least 40 feet high. Plus, the fall is another 15 to 20 feet onto a 60-degree incline of rocks. So about 60 or so feet this thing fell. I thought this thing was dead. I'll never forget the sound of that impact. This thing hit super hard and rocks started to fly down the side of this quarry's incline at least 10 feet. When it fell out of this tree, this creature landed on all fours. The thing was lying flat and is a bit dazed and or winded. Then this thing stands up bipedally on its hind legs and is about 10 to 12 feet in height. I'm thinking that this thing should be dead. I'm thinking bear, mountain lion, Bigfoot. This thing stands up and then goes back down onto all fours and jumps like a toad or a frog does. This thing clears 20 feet of ground in total, not even trying, as well as jumps in height about 8 to 10 feet in one jump. It was on all fours again, flat like a frog, and then it dropped this bird that it had in its left hand. Keep in mind, this thing landed facing away from us on the right side of us, with its back to us and running away parallel to our left. It then reaches out with its left hand and grabs the bird and pulls it back into its chest. As it grabbed the bird, it turned its head to the side, and I saw the side of its head and face. This thing was bald from the neck up. It had a canine-style snout or nose with an upper jaw, with an overhang with a very large upper teeth like fangs on a werewolf. No joke about it. This thing, when it stood up from heel to hip, was 6 to 7 feet in height. From hip to shoulder, another 3 feet. From heel to the top of its head, 10 to 13 feet easily. The head was like a human's head, but had pointed ears like a dog's, but not on the top of its head. It had ears where a human has them, but longer and pointed. It had fur like a deer in length, very short brown, gray, and black. The skin was gray in color. This creature was very skinny, though, like it was starving or not healthy. Very skinny, except the forearms and the legs were very well toned. It did not have a tail. This thing stands up again bipedally and takes a step like a track runner jumping a hurdle. It clears a 15-foot rock face again, easily 6 to 7 feet in height and 15 feet in length. It took another 5 to 6 steps and it went crashing through the woods, and we never saw it again. I stood there in total disbelief, trying to process what the heck this thing was. Now, I'm a no fear kind of guy, and this thing scared the living crap out of me. I'm standing there completely frozen with fear, trying to make sense of what just happened. I'm almost lost myself with fear because I've never had that type of fear ever, and I had to talk myself out of it. After 2 minutes of sheer confusion, I snapped out of the fear factor, and I was now in adrenaline survival mode. My number one concern was my daughter and us getting out of there alive because this thing ran the same way we had to walk to reach the car. Keep in mind, this was a busy day with people out from being cooped up all winter. Whatever this thing is, violent and super strong to the point, the right thing to do is warn people. I'll tell you this thing makes a full-grown tiger look like a mouse, and that's no joke. My daughter was confused about what had happened. I was very concerned for her safety. As we were slowly walking back, I actually started to call 911, but never did because no one would believe me and think I was mad out of my mind. I saw a few people on the way back and asked them if they had seen a big animal come down that way. They all said no. A message for all of the people out there. One thing I need to say and want to say. I have been in a lot of national parks and state forests and never once seen a thing like this creature. Take everything I thought and knew about the wilderness and throw it right out of the window and start all over. These things are 100% real, and they are in your backyard, not in some national park or some extreme remote area. They're very close to us, so please be mindful of your surroundings. I'll never step into the woods without a firearm again. This has changed my life, and I'm on an amazing journey to find serious answers. And for all of you who have seen crazy creatures and struggle with it, you're not alone. Welcome to the club of no return. Keep an open mind and talk to good people who can help you. Tonight's second encounter is a subscriber submission. Jeff, I've been toying with the idea of sending you my experience. Alls I ask is you not to use my real name. Here goes. I spent the weekend camping with my brother and family at a packed campground during the weekend. There was a large man-made lake that my brother and I desperately wanted to explore. My brother and I were 17 and 15 when this happened. My parents were strict on what we could and couldn't do, even though we were of almost adult age. Luckily for my brother and I, we waited until they were fast asleep at around 10 p.m. We snuck out of our tent and went around to explore. It's sad when you're 17 years old and your parents still helicopter you and give you a hard time, but I guess they were just nervous about us either disturbing other people or God knows what. Being summertime, there were still a lot of people up and fires going on when we decided to take a couple of the nearby trails after hanging out by the man-made lake. We talked to a few people here and there, making small talk and enjoying the night together. I think at some point we got offered booze but declined. There are quite a few cool trails around the area, and being 17 and 15, we felt indestructible and decided it was a good time to go on a night hike without any sort of light other than our tiny camping flashlights. There's this one really cool trail that extends out quite a way and then loops back around to another side of the campground, totaling 2 miles, if I remember correctly. It's like a big horseshoe, but the big horseshoe extends into the national forest and then back around. We got on the trail at around 10:30 and only saw a few other people walking their dogs. We were pretty much the only ones there, so it made for a fun time. I had stolen a cigarette from my dad and I was going to smoke it once we got far enough in the trail. We'd been walking for probably 20 minutes and everything around us was dark and quiet. Since we were on the forest now, my brother started to complain that maybe we should go back, and if Mom and Dad wake up to us not being there, we're going to be grounded for the rest of our lives. I told him to calm down and we'd be fine, lit up my cigarette. My brother was just being stupid and paranoid at the time, so I just ignored him. We continued walking and decided to pick up our pace a little to make good time because I didn't want to be super late either. We got to a point in the trail where it kind of goes up this little hill, then curves around and dips back down. My brother grabbed me and stopped me in a panic, saying that somebody was out there in the woods trying to scare us. I laughed at him, thinking he was trying to pull a fast one on me, and yelled out into the woods, "If anyone's out there, we are scared," and kept laughing. This was all a joke to me, but I would soon find out that it was not. My brother shushed me, and we both listened. He wasn't lying. I began to hear shuffling noises in several different places around us in the woods. I'm terrible at judging distance, so I couldn't tell how far away it was, but it sounded close by. I heard a few shuffling to my right of me and to the left of me. My brother panicking, thinking we were about to get jumped or some crazy axe murderer was going to kill us. I told him to calm down and let's just keep walking. As we began to walk up this hill, the noise continued, but it began to get closer to the trail and closer to the trail behind us. I told him just to pick up his pace, and we would reach the top of the hill. He turned around and screamed and took off sprinting. In that second, I knew something was terribly wrong because my brother used to be super lazy, and for him to take off sprinting, he must have been terrified. Thinking he was just being melodramatic, I turned around and shone my small flashlight in the direction that he screamed. And down on the trail, where him and I both heard the initial shuffling noises, were these two huge canine-like figures standing on their hind legs. The first thing that I noticed when I shone my flashlight was their pointed ears and the red glow of their eyes. I couldn't tell if they emitted a red glow from the reflection of my flashlight into their eyes or if it was just an unnatural glow. Either way, I froze. My flashlight was not great, so it was dim shining that far, but I saw their faces. They were ugly. It reminded me of a cross of a hyena with a wolf and stuck on a bodybuilder's body. Huge. I thought these two things were demons coming to get me. They just stared at me. I dropped my flashlight and sprinted as fast as I could, following my brother, not saying a word. I ran for my life. I've never felt such mortal danger. Time began to slow down dramatically, and I felt like I was running in a time warp. After what seemed like running for an hour, I made it out to the other side of the trail and back to the campground. Turns out we were only about a mile from the end of the trail, so we had walked a good way before we had seen what we saw. I collapsed on the ground, shaking, when I got to the trailhead entrance. Between the outermost fear and danger, the absolute exhaustion, my body was overworked. If these demons were following me and coming to get me, there is nothing I could have done. I felt helpless and alone. Things around me started to get quiet, and I didn't hear any of the shuffling noises I heard earlier. I picked myself back up and fled to my tent where my brother was curled in a fetal position crying. I tried to talk to him, but he wouldn't even make eye contact with me. Neither of us got much sleep that night, if any at all. My parents never knew we left that tent. This happened back in '96, and to this day my parents don't know what happened. I tried to figure this encounter down as demons that were coming to get us, but now that I know a little bit about cryptids and creatures out there that exist, I wonder what's around there. A little more insight as the location. I can't remember the campground because we were doing this long road trip with my dad for his business. It was somewhere around Indiana, I believe. That encounter has stayed with me since, and I had never been so afraid in my entire life. My brother to this day refuses to talk about it, even if I bring it up subtly. Well, that's my encounter, Jeff. Thanks for letting me share. Have a good day. Tonight's final encounter. Growing up in the Welsh countryside surrounded by hills, ancient woodland green belt of forest, I've encountered a few strange things over the years. The most bizarre, which till now I've only shared with a couple of people, when I encountered a strange creature on a walk by myself in a nearby woods. It was my favorite place to frequent as a child. I was maybe 10 years old at the time and walking up a one lane gravel road that cut between a small woods on a nearby hill. This was a time when parents would kick the kids out to go and play until dinner time. We would end up exploring for miles, getting up all sorts of mischief. To picture the scene, to my left the trees were mainly oak and grew upward in a stretch of woodland about 2,000 feet in length. There was a farmer's field on the hillside at the top. This incline started from a raised vertical bank of earth around 5 feet tall, just about eye level to me. As I stood on the track to my left, the wood dropped below me for around 50 feet to meet the county line. The wood was quite dense and green. This was late summer or early autumn in the afternoon. It was cool and shadowy in places, with bits of light breaking sporadically through the canopy. I was halfway walking up this gravel track before the road met a bend to the left. This bend led to a local farmhouse. It was at this point in the trek that a wooden stand or shelf was built into the bank. I discovered it was used by the farmer to leave milk churns each morning for collection by the local milkman. This was around 78, when doorstep deliveries of milk were still in fashion. As I paused to rest for a moment and planned on hopping up on the shelf and sit and enjoy the scenery, suddenly movement from a shaking holly bush caught my attention around 10 to 15 feet above my eye line and to the left. It was quite startling to see a bush moving when the rest of the woods were still. The brush was around 3 feet tall. As I stared at it, I could just make out the limbs of an animal of some sort moving in the lower branches/roots of the bush. This had me on edge instantly, as I knew this was a large animal, and I was quite familiar with all the local wildlife. But this thing was unfamiliar. When the bottom edge of the brush parted, a face, which looked like the cross between a fox and a human, popped out and stared at me. The creature had hands, not paws. Its face was covered in a short beige fur, but from the hairline and small pointed ears. Back along the body was a slightly longer coat, the same color as the chestnut red squirrel or fox. We stared at each other for seconds, and I was mesmerized by this creature. It looked as startled and shocked as I was. Its eyes were a piercing blue. It appeared that it was crouched down, looking from under the brush, facing downward toward me. It was only when it withdrew its face back into the bush and turned to stand straight up away from me that I noticed that it was the same height as me, at around 4.5 feet tall. With its back towards me, I could see a tail, sleek and tapered, very dog-like, not bushy like a fox's would be. It was slender, taut, muscular back and muscular hind legs, which were retrograde like a canine. Its arms and front legs were more slender and human-like with elbows. I can't remember seeing the back of its feet, but in that instant, its arms shot from her side, raised to her elbows. The fingers on her hands spread out. They were a charcoal gray color, and each finger ended in a small, sharp claw or nail. There was a pause, and it sprung forward, bounding and plowing upward, zigzagging through bushes and woods toward the field above. She cleared the distance on this deep incline in seconds in a blur of sticks and leaves. I've seen a badger run up that hillside and walk it by himself. It cleared it in a ridiculous amount of time. It was only then that the fear kicked in and snapped me out of my shock. I panicked, worrying which way to run. either upwards to the farmhouse or back down the track to the road, then home. I've never shared this with any of my family, and only 2 friends, until much later in my life. It wasn't for fear of ridicule, but their belief in my story that deterred me. My family and friends had always said I had a wonderful imagination, so would have thought that I said I'd made it up or imagined it. I've kept this to myself for years now. I'm 54, but I still enjoy a childlike wonder and an open mind for all things mysterious and unexplained on this beautiful earth. I've experienced many other paranormal, supernatural things in my life on this planet, some truly terrifying. I think if you're in tune with this side of things and have had these types of experiences, then you are more open and likely to encounter other things. All right, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed today's upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I want to thank you all for your support. It truly does mean the world to me. May the Great Spirit watch over us all and guide us down that path that we call life.